This video is brought to you by Squarespace. One of the most likely characters to make it into Dragon Ball FighterZ is, in my opinion, Toppo. And I'm not alone in this. He was one of the most requested characters for Season 2, according to a fan-made poll on Reddit. So today I've sat down and rewatched all of Toppo's scenes across Dragon Ball Super, trying to figure out how this character would play if he made it to Dragon Ball FighterZ. If he does make it, you know what to expect, and if he doesn't, well, it's still a fun exercise to go through. At least for me, and you guys seem to enjoy it too. Just like the Majin Vegeta prediction, this moveset is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform that allows you to build a beautiful website or online store complete with marketing tools and analytics. It's the perfect place to launch your website or business. With their easy-to-use templates or layouts and drag-and-drop features, you can quickly create a professional-looking website and showcase your ideas on the internet. You can schedule posts, you can have a comment section complete with likes and dislikes. The sky's the limit. Their help center and 24/7 customer support are always there in case you need assistance with anything related to the platform, and the list of features really goes on and on. Without knowing a word of HTML or CSS, you can build a beautiful website. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Globku and enter code Globku for a 10% discount on your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video. Before getting into character specifics, we have to take a step back and look at Toppo from a distance. Before rewatching anything, before freshening up your memory on this guy's moveset, what are the core pillars of Toppo? What types of moves are a must-have? How does he fight in general? And how does his personality shine through his moveset? Toppo is a warrior of justice. He fights evil and injustice to protect his universe, and like a good warrior of justice in Dragon Ball, he makes sure to show everyone how just he is by posing before and after every single move. He fights by throwing a lot of ki blasts through his fingertips in a move that he calls Justice Flash. He yells it so many times in Dragon Ball Super just to make sure that you don't forget that that's his trademark move. But also a trademark move is the hug, called the Justice Rear Naked Choke, in which supposedly he grabs you and doesn't let go until he breaks every bone in your body, except everyone was able to escape that choke before that happened. But okay, we've got 3 decent pillars to start building a character: poses, Justice Flash, and the big hug. I think that's pretty much everything. Oh wait! Right, he does turn into a god of destruction at some point. Since Toppo gains god of destruction powers, we don't really know how they come into play. 1, the whole character could simply be god of destruction Toppo. 2, he could have a transformation, perhaps tied to a super. Or 3, we play as regular Toppo who goes into god of destruction mode during his level 3 super and then returns back to normal by the end of the animation, which I know, it doesn't make a lot of sense for Toppo to revert back to his normal form, but neither does Broly. In fact, Broly isn't able to control his power, so it makes even less sense in Broly's case. It could very well happen. I think option 2, the transformation, is the least likely one to happen. ArcSys hasn't done many transformations for their entire roster. It would be pretty weird if Toppo was the one who did it. I mean, out of the entire roster, Toppo? Yeah, not very likely. Out of these 3 options, I think the whole character simply being God of Destruction Toppo from the start, that's the most likely to happen. But here's what pains me about God of Destruction Toppo. While I think the concept of this character unlocking God of Destruction powers in the show is extremely cool, his moveset gets a lot more boring. Toppo learns how to use Hakai energy, the energy of destruction, and he does some cool stuff with it, like deleting attacks by surrounding himself with it. And then he also shoots these Hakai orbs over and over again, and his posture becomes less justice and less funny poses and is a lot more serious, which makes it a bit tougher to make an interesting character or unique character moveset. But as I've repeatedly said on this channel, power sells DLC, and God of Destruction Toppo would certainly sell more DLC than regular Toppo. So we're gonna go with God of Destruction Toppo for this one. But since the original Toppo has so many cool moves, we're gonna integrate a few of those, at least the ones that make sense, which unfortunately means we have to say goodbye to all of his poses. But let's start with his intro and victory pose. The moment Toppo decides that justice is worthless, that it cannot protect his universe, and he tosses it aside, becoming a god of destruction, that's the turning point that makes him into the playable character that we can control. He's left behind the silly poses, and he's now a serious powerhouse with god of destruction powers. For his victory pose, instead of having a cool pose like the ones we had in the sad montage, we're gonna have something a bit more boring. I don't know, a power stance, looking down at the camera, saying something something emo. He never really won a fight in this state, so it's hard to say what it will look like. I don't know, use your imagination. But while on the topic of cinematics, I do think they would gain a lot by adding a dramatic finish here, with Vegeta Blue beating Toppo. Because that way, they could have Vegeta transform into Blue Evolved and do that final move, the one he eliminated Toppo with, and that way you give fans the Vegeta Blue Evolved that they keep asking for without having to make a whole new moveset for Vegeta. Because to make that moveset interesting, you'd probably have to pull stuff from the manga, and they're not gonna spoil that stuff. Plus, a dramatic finish where Vegeta wins. That would be a first. Moving on to his normal attacks, you might have noticed that Toppo has huge hands, and such, he tends to punch a lot. And those punches often look slower than normal, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made his jabs slower than usual. However, Toppo is faster and more agile than he first looks, and is actually a very mobile character, rarely standing his ground and attacking. He's often dashing all over the place, jumping over his opponent, and even performing multiple jumping attacks. This lariat that he lands on Frieza is a perfect example. He catches Frieza in his arm and just takes him with him, which would make for a great standing heavy attack. Toppo is certainly not the type of character to have a low light attack, but he could very well have a very late low attack in his block string, with this double X handle that he hits the ground with, sending a shockwave across the battlefield. The rest of his normals mostly look like standard punches and kicks, and he's very capable of doing all of those, but we're gonna go a bit crazier with the ki blasts. As you may have guessed already, Toppo's ki blasts are gonna be his trademark move, Justice Flash. Toppo does this move over and over and over and over and not only in his original form, but as a god of destruction as well. So it's only fitting that it becomes his move when you hit the ki blast button. However, I feel like for a move that he relies so much on, it has to be a bit more than a simple flurry of ki blasts. From the many times Toppo does Justice Flash, most of them are executed while moving. Sometimes Toppo is running towards the opponent, sometimes he's dodging attacks while shooting. The point is, Toppo is very mobile while doing this. So we're gonna give him the ability to move forwards or backwards while shooting ki blasts. On the ground, you can control the run a bit like Goku GT with his Kamehameha, but instead of holding the attack, he's actively shooting ki blasts out of his hand. In the air, it would behave a bit more like Cell's down special, where he flies straight at the opponent, or he can choose to fly backwards. But in the air, he wouldn't have free control like he has on the ground. You kinda choose to stand still, fly forwards or backwards, done. Otherwise, we get into Zamasu territory, and that's not really how the character behaves. This ki blast tech looks pretty crazy and powerful, but let's not forget that these are ki blasts, which can still be reflected or super dashed through. So while this move might be very oppressive, it is not unbeatable. And especially if his jab is slower than usual, he's gonna need something like this for pressure. And before we move on to his specials, I want to give him a command normal with a forward heavy attack. In a way, linking him to Jiren as a Pride Trooper. Jiren's forward heavy is a command grab, and so would Toppo's. But in this case, he would grab your head with one hand, and instead of following up with a ki blast, he would simply crush it, causing the opponent to crumble to the ground. It wouldn't be a fast command grab, it is a normal after all, which means it can probably be linked into other attacks into a bigger combo, so something along the lines of Jiren's command grab would be nice. Moving on to his special attacks, like I mentioned at the start of the video, when Toppo goes into God of Destruction mode, it feels like all he does is throw Hakai Orbs, one after another. So it absolutely needs to be one of his special attacks. If we make it a super, you're not going to be using it nearly enough as it does in the show. But how would these orbs behave in game? During the Tournament of Power, Beerus points out that for a moment, Toppo needs to gather the destruction energy before shooting out the orb, and that's the gap where you can attack him with. That's his weakness. But if he does gather the energy, he can throw the orb in many different ways. He's thrown slow-moving orbs, fast-moving orbs, even a tiny Hakai just to negate an attack. So with this attack, it would have a very slow startup, that's when he's gathering the energy, with quarter circle forward and the special button, for instance. If you hold the button, a big orb of destruction will come out and slowly travel towards the opponent. This orb would have very high priority, would even beat beam projectiles, and since it slowly moves towards the opponent, Toppo can use it for cover as he approaches. In a way, it's like Piccolo's orb, but on steroids. But unlike Piccolo, this guy is actually gonna take a while to launch this orb, because he needs to hold a special attack button. Also, it doesn't track like Piccolo's, it travels in a fixed direction, so opponents could, for instance, super jump over it, but this would be a way to close the distance and limit their options. On the other hand, if Toppo isn't able to charge this attack the whole way, it would be a tiny Hakai orb, which would explode close to Toppo and would be mostly used to deny attacks. Let's say, for instance, the opponent sees you charging the Hakai Orb. This move is oppressive, they don't want you to do it. So they throw some Ki Blasts trying to interrupt it. You let go of the button, unable to charge it all the way, but the tiny orb still neutralizes the Ki Blast, denying the punish. And this orb is obviously his big gimmick here, but we're not done with his special attacks. The rest is gonna come from original Toppo mixed with some moves that he does in his Hakai form. For instance, Toppo is particularly proud of his body and his ability to take attacks head on. At some point during the show, he powers through Ki Blasts while blocking and he never stops running. Later in the show, he gains Hakai, surrounding himself with destruction energy, which would delete any attack thrown his way. So similar to Ultra Instinct Goku, we're gonna give him a way to deny opponents' attacks while moving forward. And while his aura is active, he can go through most attacks in the game, just like Goku's flippity flops. After executing this move, Toppo would punch the opponent, making it somewhat of a lariat move, but without it being as fast as a lariat. Think of it more like Cooler's Punch, the one that's immune to projectiles, but a bit better than that. We're not gonna give him a ton of options like Ultra Instinct has coming out of the flippity flops, because that's not the type of character that Toppo is. He activates the Destruction Key, denies pretty much every attack thrown his way, and punches the opponent. If he misses, he's gonna get punished, and his Destruction Key cannot defend against supers. Vegeta did overpower his God of Destruction Key, so I feel like really powerful attacks should be able to overcome it. Next up, this is gonna be Toppo's mix-up tool, Justice On. This is when Toppo jumps on top of Goku, landing on his shoulders, which then he links into Justice Tornado. So Justice On is kind of a move that he can link into other attacks. And since he's stepping on your shoulders, this would be an overhead. Remember that Toppo also has a low attack late in his block string with that ground stomp that we talked about. This is immediately a great beginner high-low mix-up. Justice On is your non-committal mix-up where you step on your opponent and if they block, you're safe, you can block his counter. But if you really think you're gonna open them up, you hit the button again for the Justice Tornado, which is a launcher and allows you to combo from it, but it is unsafe. Or you could also spend half a bar of meter for the EX move, which would be the Justice Crusher, in which he grabs your arm, spins over you, and dislocates your shoulder. This would be an unblockable attack, similar to how Ultra Instinct jumps over you and command grabs. Though in this case, not as tricky or as fast as Ultra Instinct Goku. That move is a problem and it needs to be patched. And those would be his special moves. Let's move on to the flashy stuff. Here are his supers. We're gonna start simple with a big orb. This is a big and powerful move that he throws both in his original form as well as his God of Destruction form. Toppo needs to hold back because if he killed someone during the Tournament of Power, he would be disqualified. So instead of using his Destruction Key, he uses his regular key, which is still a lot, and launches this attack, which is a pretty simple and straightforward level 1 super. Just throw it out there, deal the damage, get out. Next up, the moment you've been waiting for. I promised you hugs at the start of this video, and hugs are exactly what you're gonna get. Justice Rear Naked Choke is our second level 1 super, and this one can be extended by holding down the button. Toppo grabs the opponent from behind and doesn't let go until all of their bones are broken. In the game, letting go is up to you. The super costs 1 bar of meter, but if you want to keep smashing them, you can keep spending the meter. Each tick deals damage and spends your bar, but if it's gonna kill the opponent, hey, why not? It behaves similar to Tien, but doesn't cost you any health, although it also can't deal as much damage, otherwise it would be completely broken. The scaling would be something more like Hit's Cannon, but in this case you can actually choose how many meters you want to spend instead of just, here's all of it. And to finish it all off, the final attack Toppo used against Vegeta is gonna be his level 3, grabbing 2 Hakai orbs, fusing them together into a giant orb of Destruction Key, and then throwing it at the opponent with some awesome animation work. This would be a very good display of power, and I feel like I should talk a bit more about it because this is the pinnacle of the character, but at the end of the day, it's a level 3 that behaves like many others, so there you have it. Don't forget to check out Squarespace, link down below. Thank you for sponsoring the video, and that, folks, is my moveset prediction for Toppo. I did leave a few moves out of his moveset, but let me know if you missed any of them, or if you had a different idea for this character, and who should I make a moveset prediction for next? Let me know in the comments down below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku, and I'll see you next time. Bye!